The Sega Genesis was absolutely loaded with action platformers from pretty much the very beginning. This genre was the staple of 8 and 16-bit gaming for years, and included Mario, Sonic, and most everything in between. These games became so common, the quality was all over the place. With Sega using a ton of outside studios for many of its releases, this rang particularly true for the Genesis, so you needed to wade through some pretty rough titles to get to the good stuff. One of those games for me was the infamous Greendog, the beached surfer dude. This was released in 1992 on a 4-megabit cartridge. It was developed by Interactive Designs, the company that also did Tailspin under that name before being purchased by Sega and rebranded as Sega Interactive. This new venture was behind Dinosaurs for Hire and Eternal Champions later in the console's life. The character Greendog was based on the creation of surfer Rick Green, who had originally designed a board game called Surf Trip in 1988. When I saw it was coming to the Genesis, I was super excited because I had been exposed to a stellar review for it. GamePro absolutely drowned it in praise for its graphics, sound, and playability. And even when I saw a review that wasn't so hot, it wasn't exactly crushed as an unplayable mess. I went in expecting a solid game, and boy did I get a heavy dose of reality. After only playing a few stages in, I had all I could stomach. This steaming pile of excrement would take up no more of my time. Now over 30 years later, I break out Greendog once more to play it all the way through to the end, and see if a 17-year-old Sega Lord X had been right all along. I hope you guys enjoy my review of Greendog for the Sega Genesis. We begin our journey with Greendog being wiped out by a massive wave that seemed to come out of nowhere. As you recover, you realize that a necklace has appeared on your person, and you can't get it off. Worse, you also can't surf anymore, thanks to an Aztec curse that is now robbing you of your life's passion. Your girlfriend Bambi then explains that in order to break the curse, you need to collect the various treasures located all over the Caribbean. You jump on your trusty pedalcopter, and the journey begins. As I mentioned before, this is a pretty standard action platformer that comes with fighting enemies like birds, crabs, and fish. Instead of having a life bar that depletes as you take damage, you have a damage bar in its place. This is sort of like a life bar in reverse. As you take the damage, the bar fills up, and once it gets full, you lose a life. Fortunately, Greendog does have the ability to defend himself with a frisbee that returns to him after a short distance. This can be thrown at an upwards angle as well. As you dispatch enemies, they drop food like hot dogs, corn dogs, ice cream, pizza, donuts, burgers, and french fries that award you points. If you grab a can of cola, it reduces your damage meter so you can keep on playing a bit longer. A few stages here allow you to use your dog Fetch to collect food for you and even attack enemies. Don't let him get that bone though, he'll stop and feast on it, leaving you alone. There are also a few power-ups you can get. The Super Disc is an auto-tracking version of your frisbee that hunts down enemies on its own. The clock freezes enemies in place for a short time, and the umbrella hat makes you invincible for a bit. Stage design is of the simplest variety. There's not much in the way of any real exploration or hidden items tucked away in easily bypassed corners. Most stages are incredibly straightforward, left to right affairs that do not feature much in the way of verticality. After making your way through the opening areas of the island, you must then traverse an Aztec ruin that houses a boss statue that must be defeated. Also mixed in are skateboarding and inline skate stages where you must jump over spikes and bottomless pits. Once an island is defeated, it's back to the pedalcopter where you must fly to the next island in a sort of bonus stage where you can collect score items as they fall from the sky. Enemies do populate these areas and you can die, so it's no easy trip. Finally, Greendog here is a single player experience only. The visuals of Greendog are both mildly amusing and outright offensive. On the positive side, I really did like the backgrounds of many of the stages here. They feature some great layered scrolling and made a decent effort at trying to look like the real thing. It is unfortunate that the foregrounds do not offer any help in that regard. There is nothing happening in your immediate surroundings that accentuate the presentation. On the beach there's just sand, in the jungles there's just some rocks. The Aztec temples feature hardly any detail at all. When a stage does put some effort into the visuals around you, like the aquarium, it really sticks out as an example of how much better this game could have looked. But the biggest issue with Greendog is the title character himself. I absolutely despise the art style used for this fella. His lanky, funky frame lacks any appeal at all. You only need to spend a few seconds considering the opening cinematic to understand this, because the artist using Rick Green's creation chose to make his girlfriend Bambi look nothing like him. These two sprites are on the screen at the same time and they look like they're from completely different games. This dude doesn't look like someone or something that I'd want to take for an adventure. There is also a major lack of variety in the enemies and bosses. Most of what you face are fish and birds, with a spattering of stage-related enemies around those. This title was 2 years after the 8-megabit Strider, and these visuals were not what I expected on my powerhouse Genesis console. I mean, stuff like Moonwalker and eSWAT were looking better at the same cartridge size years before this. I didn't think much of it back then, and I feel the same way today. Greendog uses the GEM sound driver for its audio presentation, and as far as music goes, this doesn't sound bad at all. The Calypso-inspired tunes are catchy and don't offend the ear like a lot of GEMS-related audio. I wouldn't listen to it outside the game, but as far as fitting the environment with what you'd expect to hear, it gets the job done. However, the sound effects are god-awful, Atari 2600 level blips, bloops, and screeches. I typically use a Mega SG for my captures, and it was so irritating I thought it may be the device. I loaded up the real hardware to check and nope, it was the game regardless of the hardware. The sound effects are just downright terrible. Let's have a few examples so you can hear things for yourself. As I said before, I was 17 when I first played this. It only took a few levels for me to decide I wanted no more, so the vast majority of this game was a new experience for me. The plain Jane platforming stages are uninspired, but completely playable. The large damage bar means you can eat a ton of enemy attacks before dying, so most of these areas have no challenge whatsoever. Collect a few of the cola cans to replenish your damage, and you can pretty much play it wide open without a worry in the world. There are a few irritations here and there, like the aquarium stage, that sends you back to the beginning if you get sucked up into a pipe. But this is easily avoided the second time around, just paying attention to the animation. So easy was this game, I didn't lose a single life all the way through, unless it was on the skateboard and skate sections. These cheap, mind-numbing designs are the worst way to extend playability and add difficulty. Not only are you hamstrung by a completely unnatural momentum that yo-yos you forward and back, but these areas are also loaded with insta-deaths that eat your lives like tic-tacs, and obstacles that constantly set you back. To add insult to injury, some of these even have enemies that yo-yo back and forth with you, just laying the damage on constantly while you struggle with the piss-poor control. Greendog's unconventional animations also mean your sprite is wide open to damage in situations it shouldn't be. when you attack, your outstretched arms will clip right into enemies despite your body being well far from danger. Adjusting to this can be frustrating for the first half of the game. Another big issue I had were the Aztec boss encounters for most of the islands. They all look pretty much the same, just a set of blocks shooting crap at you. There's no creativity here at all, and if you have enough of your damage bar empty, just go in guns blazing and they fall with no strategy at all. Finally, all these stages are short and offer nothing beyond the standard goal of getting to the end. There's nothing to collect, no secret to uncover, no choices or paths that lead to a different ending. If your game is going to be this uninspired and mundane, you could have at least added a few interesting tidbits to keep the players coming back for a second or third time. As it is, Greendog is a tired, unimpressive adventure marred further by cheap gameplay elements that really hammer the fun factor. So, should you run out and try Greendog for your Sega Genesis? I actually recommend that you do. There are a great many of you that will find the setting and theme appealing, and the core gameplay will be enough to make it worth a play session or two. And if you have any skill at all, that should be enough for you to see the ending. But fans that had honed in on hits like Revenge of Shinobi, Mystic Defender, Castle of Illusion, and even Sonic will leave this adventure wanting more. Rumor has it that Sega of America was so doubtful of this title's success, it was made in a mere 5 months on a shoestring budget. I'd say after beating Greendog, that narrative is certainly believable and explains why this game panned out the way it did. I have no doubt the developers and Interactive Designs had bigger, better plans for old Greendog, but the end product is not exactly a celebration of all the Genesis was capable of. The ending of the game alludes to further adventures of Greendog, yet Sega never touched the property again outside of a Game Gear conversion that tries to mimic its 16-bit big brother but manages to be far worse in the process. That failure and the likely low sales it inspired meant the end for Greendog. That leaves us with a game that is easily lost in the heap of similar releases in the early to mid 90s. And on the Genesis, the better options for your time and money number in the hundreds. If you want to run through jungle ruins, try something like Pitfall: The Mayan Adventure. I guarantee you'll have loads more fun. I'm Sega Lord X. Thank you guys for watching, and I will catch you next time.